Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Long Game Heated Rivalry podcast. My name is Declan. This is Silvan. And before we get started, we would like to put a little bit of an announcement out. Silvan and I have a plan to organize an event, a bit of a meet and greet, just to come together in person and talk about Heated Rivalry, the books, the book club, anything that you're interested in that sort of coincides with the podcast. If you would like to come meet me and Sylvan in person, then you can come and see us in Belfast on the 19th of July. A little short notice, but if you're able to attend, please let us know. We'll be putting out a link that will connect you to a Google Doc, which will allow you to put in your name, your address details, anything like that, to sort of gauge interest to see if anyone is interested in joining us in Belfast on the 19th. So if that's something that you're interested in, if you have a bit of free time or you can catch a quick flight, then yeah, definitely check that out. We'll be releasing more details about that later on this month.
So, where we left off in the previous episode was chapter 19. So, we're picking up from chapter 20. And now, Declan, things are heating up. Things are moving at a faster pace. In a similar way as the sun has been moving in the UK this week, it is 34 degrees this week. I am sweating from every crevice and orifice in my body. So if you can hear my fan, I apologize sincerely, but I cannot live without it right now.
Yeah, Sylvan will spontaneously combust if he turns the fan off. So, give him a little bit of grace. And it's funny because I'm in Ireland at the moment and we are getting like a lovely summer that we never get because for some reason it's just like 10 degrees cooler here. So we're getting like a nice 24, 25 degrees while everyone in England are being cooked alive in the pits of hell, which, unfortunate for you.
It's like being in an air fryer right now. But yeah, so in chapter 20, what we see is it's interesting because not a huge amount happens, but there are certain things that happen that really pique my interest. So
Mm.
here we have this infamous sort of Skype call that Ilya and Shane have, where Ilya is like, "Oh, you wear glasses," and that catches him off guard. Um, I wanted to get your take on this because I don't think they mention that Shane wears glasses anywhere else.
No. So I'm gonna go full English teacher here. I'm gonna break this down and read way too much into it. Basically, I think these glasses are like a symbol of Shane's more private side. This is the side of him that is exclusively like removed from hockey. Like this is not something that he would wear during hockey. It's nothing to do with any of the sport, anything like that. This is just Shane is his sort of natural habitat and his daily routine. And Ilya is getting to see it for the first time. Like this is like domestic Shane. This is Shane throughout the lens of possible boyfriends. Cute. It's sweet. It's very nerdy. It's nothing overtly like sexual, even though it turns Ilya on like nothing else. But there's something quite cute and wholesome about Shane and his little glasses, reading his little book at home on his bed. And it's not a typically sexual image, but for some reason, Ilya is entranced by the idea of this domesticated version of Shane and this more private version of Shane that no one else gets to see. Obviously, everyone got to watch like the yoga thing and him doing his little documentary by his cottage, but this is actually like a true private version of Shane, and Ilya is the only one who gets to see it outside of maybe Shane's parents. So, yeah, it's like getting to see a new version of Shane, and Ilya just falls in love with this version just as much as he's fallen in love with the version that everyone else sees.
I love that you say in trance because that's what it actually feels like. It does feel like a trance like state for Ilya. And whilst I was reading this, and I know there's no connection with this, but I was thinking about Jonathan Bailey and his slutty little glasses. Not my words that I've chosen. That's just what the internet call them. Because I know I've been very critical about using that word whilst describing Shane. But it just reminded me of the whole Jonathan Bailey thing during the Jurassic Park movie premieres that he was doing last year.
Yeah, it's so funny. Like growing up, having glasses was like seen as the, oh my God, having glasses is you're a nerd, you're a dork, and you're so uncool and whatever. But see now it's like, oh, glasses are so sexy. Like you're an intellectual. Oh, you're so clever. Oh, wow. And so the meaning has changed, and it's so funny now that in like modern romance content that it's seen as this like alluring thing. It's sort of like, oh, that's kind of cheeky. That's kind of, it's almost like you're playing a character. It's like a role play. It's so interesting how that switch is flipped, and I think it sort of coincides with the rise of like the alternative guy of like the guy with the novel in his back pocket. That sort of aesthetic, which is like a new form or like a new popular form of attraction towards men. It's not just like the big jock and with the muscles and the sports t-shirt. It's soft, sort of well dressed, well read, literature focused guy with glasses. Yeah, it's such a funny thing that this is like a new sort of popular trend in how men are viewed in terms of attractiveness.
Completely, because I've worn glasses most of my life, and I got bullied for wearing glasses as a
Mm.
child. Like anything that makes you stand out when when you're younger or you're a teenager, you get bullied for. And it's funny how now people are like, "Oh, like your glasses." And I even lived with somebody years and years ago who wore fake glasses. Now, I have to caveat this by saying they blocked out the blue light. And for those of you who are listening, I used, inverted commas. I was like, "Stop it." If they blocked out blue light, why are you wearing them outside? This makes no sense. So I have an issue when people wear fake glasses, like the rest of us got bullied and we had to earn this. You don't get to wear fake glasses because they look cool now.
You had to suffer, so now
Right?
it's your turn to get the praise instead of someone coming along and stealing it from under you.
Exactly. And as you were talking about this sort of like new sort of stereotype of the guy that reads and the book in his back pocket and probably has a tote bag or something, I immediately thought of Jess from the Gilmore Girls.
Yeah, it's also like Jacob Elordi coded as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know what? I'm all here for that stereotype, so I'm all good. But when I was reading this, we get this. I think they call it a Skype. They connect via Skype, and that's a bit of a
Mhm.
throwback now because, as we know, Skype no longer exists. They got sort of absorbed into Teams. But I can't help but think, and maybe this is just me, I can't help to think of all the internet boyfriends we all had growing up as teenagers that we never actually met, but we were madly in love with, that we would Skype on a daily basis. And, you were saving up money for one day visiting this person. And this is what it reminded me of, is this fantasy in a way.
Mm. It's interesting that you have that read of it because I never really had that experience. Like I never like did anything on the down low at all. I was like, I'm gonna try to date girls until I come out, and then when I came out, then I could like I just openly pursued anything I wanted. But like that experience of like meeting someone online, talking to them, open up to them, and connecting with them on a level where you've not met them face to face, well, like that's sort of like a foreign experience to me. So that's interesting that that's your take from it, and I can sort of see that now. Um, as like it's almost paying homage to those sort of queer online relationships that don't didn't get to see the light of day, but they still had like that connection going on as well at the same time. That's interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised because I felt like this was such a universal experience and I'm realizing maybe it wasn't. I'm curious to hear from the listeners if anyone else had like an internet boyfriend or internet girlfriend or significant other that, was this sort of teenage crush kind of
Mm.
thing. Because for me, there was safety in these online romances.
Mm.
You were able to experience parts of a relationship. You felt the connectedness, the safety. I think at the time I had intentions to meet, but I knew it wasn't going to happen. But there was a part that you could experience if you perhaps weren't out, for example, in your own life. And There were just it felt really wholesome. I mean, I got a little steamy, but it felt really wholesome for the most part.
Yeah, it's almost like you can dip your toe into the pond and not like fear having to fully jump in. Yeah, and like you said, it's also a safe way of being able to act out your sexuality in some sort of way that can bring you satisfaction, but whilst also keeps you safe. You don't need to do anything in public. You don't need to worry about being caught out. Um, yeah, to be honest, it never occurred to me that that would have been like an option I could have tried. Um, for me, it was more about like denial in myself. So as soon as I accepted it for what it was, I didn't really feel the need to like hide it anymore or try to be hidden. And so I just sort of didn't have that experience, which is very interesting. Yeah, that's fascinating.
And speaking of experiences, you really get in this chapter the sense of Ilya having the experience of fulfilling his duties as a son. So he says this in this chapter very early on.
Mhm.
He talks about sort of his brother being the executor of his father's estate, and Ilya had fulfilled his duties as a son. And it feels like there's this closing of the book quite literally for him here.
Yeah, yeah, you do get the idea that he's done. Like he's done everything that he can. He's provided for the family. He's fulfilled his obligations to his father. He's done what is culturally appropriate for him to do, and now he's sort of done. And it's interesting that the brother was the executor of the state because obviously Ilya is clearly the more responsible child. And the fact that the father would have made that the decision that it wouldn't have been Ilya tells you a lot about how much he actually appreciated Ilya and everything that he actually did, which was not very much. Which for Ilya is probably devastating, to be honest. I mean, he's tried his best to be the perfect image for his father. He is definitely the most successful out of both of the children, and has been the breadwinner, the provider, the award winner, the one to push the family name into different stratospheres and social circles. And yet, in the end, didn't mean anything to the father. Ilya could never have pleased him.
I think you're right. I think there is an element where Ilya was never going to feel fulfilled in that relationship with his family, despite being the breadwinner, despite literally funding everyone else's lifestyle. And I wonder, in a way, in the book, it's very evident that the brother is the father's caretaker or caregiver, I suppose, because Ilya isn't there. And they don't really make mention of this in the book, at least Rachel Reid doesn't from what I've read. And I think it's an extra layer in the TV show that they've added that helps map out this relationship and flesh it out a little bit more, which I appreciated in the TV show.
Yeah, definitely. The TV show does a better job of establishing the sort of relationship that Ilya does have with his father and makes it more clear about how torn Ilya is in terms of what he needs to be doing to look after his father because you get the idea that Ilya is doing it out of love. As it's a complex, mixed up sort of love. Um, and this sort of real need for his father's approval in the TV show, whereas in the book, it definitely feels more like an obligation. It doesn't feel like Ilya loves his father at all. It's more like something that he has to do because
Mm.
he's family and he does what needs to be required of him. And there's no real love lost in that sense. Um, and to be honest, when I reread The Long Game, that sort of just confirmed that for me. The way in which Ilya talks or rather doesn't talk about his father is a big noticeable point in that book. I'll not say any more on that because I'll tell when you've not read it yet. Um, but yeah, I definitely get the sense that this is all out of obligation and the love between him and his father in the book is completely lost. Whereas in the TV show, you can sort of see Ilya really like toying and fighting against the idea that his father doesn't really love him, or rather can't express it in a healthy way. And Ilya is torn about trying to get that love from him, and he still cares, which seems to be his motivation in the show, which is a lot more tragic, I think, and lends a bit more depth to the character.
And it adds that motivation to yearn for his father's affection, his father's love, his father's respect, is what helps you connect to Ilya, and it makes Ilya a lot more. I'm struggling with the word here. I was going to say palatable, but that's not the word. It makes you really. I mean, for me, it helps me connect to Ilya's grief in a way,
Yeah, yeah,
in a way that I'm not connected in the book at all.
yeah. It's because in the book it's very clear cut. Ilya doesn't like his father. He does this out of obligation, and then after when he dies, he dies. Ilya fulfills his role within the family and what is culturally appropriate, and then he leaves. Cuts off his brother, doesn't want anything else to do with the family. He was doing it out of obligation. Um, TV Ilya is a lot different. He was doing it out of a need for his father's love, out of unresolved issues between the two, a very complicated relationship, much more human, much more realistic. I mean, there's a lot of people that I would see and clients I would have that have very complicated relationships with their parents, um, where they're very torn between this uncontrollable love that they do have for them and the pain that those parents inflict upon them, sometimes unintentionally, sometimes intentionally. And it creates a very complicated mix of emotions for them where they can't really work it out. And whenever they're encountering grief, then in relation to those people, it becomes even more complicated because, like, there's the guilt of hating someone that you love and wanting them to not be gone, but also wanting them to be gone and feeling bad about it, but not feeling bad about it. It's this, like, whole spear of emotions that really take a lot of time to pick apart and to dissect in a way that helps you understand in the end. Um, and I feel with TV, Ilya, you get a lot more of that realistic element of the complicated dynamics within families. Whereas Book Ilya is a bit more straightforward in that sense. He just sort of, okay, his father's dead. I've done the funeral. I'm cutting my brother off. We're done. I'm not going back to Russia.
And what you talk about there is there are lots of different types of grief. And I'm remembering a podcast I did with Litsa Williams on my other podcast and she's from What's Your Grief? And she was the one who told me about the different types of grief, and their book does it so well. I'll link it in because it's actually a really good listen. Um, and so I imagine when Ilya's father was still alive, but they knew the diagnosis, that's what you call anticipatory grief or ambiguous loss. It's when you lose the person whilst they're still living. And I think for Ilya, after his father dies, there's a period of complicated grief where there is a lot of nuances. It's not just, that he misses him, but he didn't love him and perhaps, and, the way he was raised. And so I think there are lots of things that come up in that grief in itself.
Mm.
One of the things I wanted to talk about in this chapter, and we talked about it a little bit in the previous episode, was this preoccupation that Ilya has in wanting to see Shane's bedroom. And I mean, there were so many layers of what we talked about last time, and I really, really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. And here, again, Ilya's like, show me your room, because they're on Skype. And when he does, it made me chuckle because Ilya decided he didn't care about the view or the bedroom anymore. It was as boring as he had been expecting. It could have been a hotel room. Now, this doesn't surprise me. Ilya is wanting to get, and like you said, this more intimate side of Shane, Shane with the glasses, Shane in his natural sort of habitat. And then when he realizes, it's a showroom essentially, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, why should it? Because Ilya is just fishing for more details about this guy he's in love with. He wants to know everything. He wants to know every detail about this guy because he is so madly in love with him that any bit of information about him, any extra information about who he is, how he lives, what his life is like, is gold dust to Ilya. And like, come on, like relationship goals. Like, imagine someone loving you and being so obsessed with you to that level of detail where I just want to even know where you're sleeping tonight. I want to know what it looks like. I don't care if it's boring. I just care that you're showing me and you're letting me in and you're being vulnerable with me. And it's such a small thing, but to Ilya, it's the world because it's Shane finally accepting that he is not separating Ilya from his private life anymore, that he's now welcome into it and he's now a part of it. And that is a new stage of their relationship where it's a lot more domestic, it's a lot more real. Like, they've been in each other's spaces now, they have been in each other's private moments and private places, and there you go. Boyfriends much?
Quite literally. And speaking of domestic, there's a part in the chapter where Ilya says Ilya wanted more than anything to be able to cover Shane's body with his own. Now, if anyone out there has a weighted blanket, they will know being smothered by somebody else's body weight, it doesn't have to be sexual, is like one of the most weirdly comforting things ever.
Yeah, it is really comforting. It's like it's affection, it's comfort, it's relaxation. It's just that feeling of contact, of being held. It's and it can be completely platonic as well. It's sort of like a feeling you would have got like a cuddle from your parents, like a cuddle from your aunt or someone you cared about, or cuddle with a friend, like anything. It gives that warm sort of endorphins of like I'm looked after, I'm safe, I'm comfortable, I'm loved, and that is clearly what Ilya is trying to say here. Is I want to make this guy feel warm, calm, loved, and comfortable. Like that's essentially what he's saying in that.
And thank God they're both hockey players, because can you imagine this massive man of Ilya Rozanov lying on top of a regular person who wasn't as built or strong as someone like Shane? He would literally crush someone's bones.
Yeah, it would be like, okay, this is really nice, but can you get off me?
Right? But it would feel so good. Like on a sensory level, it just tickles this
Yeah,
part of my brain where I'm like, don't get off, just stay there.
it would feel great for like 15 seconds, and it's like, okay, you're suffocating me. Get off me. Which is typically how it goes for me, which is like, oh, this is nice, but get off me right now. You're too warm. Get off.
Right, and you talk about this sort of affectionate side of Ilya, and what you see in this chapter as well is there's this dom sub play that we get again, and it takes me back to Vegas because they talk about Ilya says things like, "I think you like to be told what to do, Hollander," and Shane sucks in a breath and says, "Maybe a little," and then Ilya says, "And you're a little show off." Shane says, "I'm not." And Ilya says, "You are. You love praise. You want everyone to see how good you are." And then Shane says, "I'm almost done." "Yeah, well, so do you. So fair." And then Ilya says, "No, I know I am good. I don't care what people say."
Yeah. hmm
What are your
Explaining
thoughts?
his like the difference in confidence between the two. Ilya is very confident in himself, in his sexuality, in the way that he presents himself to the world. He is not shy at all at being who he is, even in terms of his sexuality. Shane is much more caught up about coming out than Ilya is. Honestly, Ilya would do it tomorrow if he felt he could be with Shane forever. Whereas Shane is a lot more hesitant. And also, even in the bedroom, it's the same. Ilya is very sexually adventurous and he knows what he wants and he's not afraid to experiment. And so he has, and this has filled him and instilled him with a confidence. He knows what he wants, he knows what he likes. Whereas Shane is a bit more nervous about it. He's a bit more withdrawn about it. It takes a bit more time to coax it out of him. But I also think the idea of you like to be controlled for Shane, it's because Shane is constantly trying to control everything, all things at once, the world and himself. And so having the ability to pass it on to somebody else for a while, to like, okay, I can't and don't want to deal with the pressure of this control anymore. Can you take control for me instead for a while? And that must feel like such a relief. It must feel so relaxing, but also a little bit saucy as well, a little dangerous. It's like, oh, I don't usually do this. And it's just probably a massive relief that he is around someone that he feels safe and comfortable enough with to relinquish control for a change, which for someone who, as we know, going forward, is neurodivergent and also, I think, OCD. Yeah, this is a big thing for him.
And it takes a huge amount of trust.
Mm,
And I'm going to make a link between Shane Hollander and Jennifer Lopez. Wait for it. It'll make sense.
interesting. Go.
Now, I know I trashed J-Lo rom-coms a couple of episodes ago, but that was only like the newer ones. The old ones were great. Made in Manhattan, masterpiece. But I remember when Jennifer Lopez got married then to Mark Anthony, they asked her about sort of like her domestic role at home or something like that. Because, Jennifer Lopez she's J-Lo, right? She has multiple businesses and a singing career and a music career and a huge movie career as well, and the clothing lines and the skincare and all that. And she actually said in this interview, she's not like that at home. She's quite traditional in her sort of values at home. She doesn't wear the pants in that relationship, which as a teenager, I thought, oh, I don't get it at the time, and I get it now. And I
Mm,
get it within this context. It takes a huge amount of trust for Shane to be able to say, you take over. I also just need a break.
mm, Yeah, I think it's actually, I think this is the real, now, this is me speaking just from my own personal opinion and perspective. I think this idea of women wanting to be controlled and they want a man that's gonna do whatever and big strong man's gonna protect everyone, he's gonna run my life and he's gonna look after me and do blah 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 blah. I don't think that's actually the intention or the need. It is the idea of being with someone that can take control for you when you want them to, who does take initiative, does take the lead, but respects your autonomy while they're doing it and respects your needs and your wants, and someone that you can trust to get things done for you whenever you can't do them for yourself. I think that is the actual version of that people are looking for. A man who is confident in himself, takes initiative, is able to do what needs to be done, and can look after you whenever you don't want to have to look after yourself. That's a lot more appealing than a man who comes in and tells me what to do and controls everything that I do.
Isn't that a dream though? Like that is the dream.
Yeah, I know. It
Like
is.
we all love like a verse king. Like come in, do your thing, and then keep going. But
Anyway, let's go.
yeah. Um, and there's this point to, continue the smut, but there's this point in the Skype call where things heat up. However, there's a change here, there's a sweetness, there's an intimacy here that happens. Because I think it's Shane that says, I think I'd rather see your face to Ilya rather than, his penis or whatever whilst they're Skyping.
Mm,
And there's the part in this chapter where Shane says, it felt like they were really in bed together, facing each other, talking at the end of a long day. And there's this domestication sort of fantasy that's happening here where there is that trust and the intimacy that you were talking about.
yeah, yeah. They they just want to be boyfriends. Like it's so clear at this point. Like they're just after the domestic life. They want to wake up together. They want to stay in bed together, have their lazy days, and wake up and the first thing they see is the person they love. It's their face. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of the goal for most people is to be able to have that and have that connection and that warmth and that comfort and that security. Um, and they're getting a glimpse of it in the Skype call. They're getting a sort of look through the window, you could say, of what they could have if things go right, if they can manage this relationship in a way that is beneficial for both of them and it turns out right in the end. And yeah, it probably fills Shane and Ilya with a whole load of longing for each other. Um, because there's also the reality of their jobs. Like they're hockey players, they travel the country 9 months out of the like 8 or 9 months out of the year. Like they could be separated from each other and only get to see each other like once a month or whatever. Like this is the reality of what their life could look like going forward. Yes, they'll have those sweet moments and they'll have the moments of domestic bliss and being together and being in love, but there's also the reality of their careers and their lives and what that would actually look like trying to make that long distance work. And yeah, I imagine it's very, very confusing and complicated for them.
And long distance is hard work. I've never really done long distance in a real relationship. Like I said, I had internet boyfriends when I was younger, and I don't know how real that was, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear from some of the listeners about what a long distance relationship actually entails.
Well, I can speak to some of it. Like my current partner, we were long distance for close to a year. Um, and it is hard. It's complicated in terms of scheduling and time management and financial cost as well of traveling and also just missing the person and them not being there is like a mentally taxing thing. It's hard because ideally if you're in a relationship you want to be with that person kind of all the time. You're talking about someone who is like one of your closest friends, if not your best friend, and not being able to see them whenever you want or coming home to them whenever you want, like that's hard. That's not easy. And it's mentally taxing, financially taxing, and physically taxing as well, because a lot of times you're having to compromise sleep, your whole day plan. Like sometimes you'll just want to see them for a night, and so you'll travel 2 hours to see them, but you're also supposed to be in work in your city at 9 o'clock the next day, and so you're traveling back at 6 in the morning. It is complicated, but if you care enough about the person, you will try, but it's not a long-term sustainable thing. The toll is too heavy. So you really, really need to work on an exit strategy for the long distance to really make a long distance relationship work, I think.
Which is what surprises me about how long Shane and Ilya have been going on at this. Because for the most part, it was sexual and it was hookups. And we see this slow sort of morphine into the boyfriend sort of experience in a way. And this has already surpassed longer than what I anticipated it might have gone on for in real
Yeah.
life.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't think they would have been a situationship for this long.
No, um, I do genuinely believe that there are probably people out there, like outliers, one-offs, who have had this experience. Um, the mental torment of that is astronomical. I think for these two, it kind of helps the fact that they are separating their feelings from the hookups for a good chunk of those years. They are sort of living under the delusion that they can keep feeling and physical separate. And so they're able to effectively lie to themselves for a number of years, which probably kept them sane during that time. If they were fully in love and fully open and doing the domestic stuff and all that part of the relationship, as soon as they let themselves feel that, it was like game over. It was like, I know what it's like to be with you now in a way like this, and now I cannot unfeel it. I cannot unsee it. And so now I am constantly longing for it. And I think that's why they've gotten this far because they have been denying that sort of domesticated romantic side of the relationship. But then when they allowed themselves to finally experience it, all of a sudden they can't stay away from each other. And
Mm,
this is the big shift. This is the shift in the relationships. This is what has now created the urgency for them to do something about this.
yeah. Can I ask, are there any perks of having a long distance relationship for however long you did have it?
Yeah, I mean, Nate's really annoying. Sometimes it's nice to get like a couple of days away from him. But that's it. um, but in a more serious note, like having your space is important. Um, and being able to have your own alone time and not being on someone else's schedule all the time. Um, not sort of having someone fill your schedule for you, which is a big thing in relationships. It's like, oh, we're going to my aunt so and so birthday party next week. And you're like, oh God, okay then. It's sort of easier to get out of obligations like that. Um, but that's all small stuff. Like ultimately, not being around that person during those moments in that time feels a lot worse than the benefits of like what sitting alone in your room for a couple of days. Like it's no. So no, yeah. The benefit is that you still keep a certain element of your independence and freedom. Um, but it's not really that great of a trade-off if
Yeah.
you're really into someone.
And during a heat wave like we're experiencing right now, it's much easier to sleep alone in a bed than with a hot water bottle next to you.
I would start. Like honestly, the past couple of days, don't touch me. Don't come near me. Don't breathe. You're breathing my air. You're breathing too close to me. I need you to move over, move up. Move. I'll be on the ground. I don't care if you're on the ground. Get on the ground then. So be it. You're touching me. Get away from me. Yeah. Any couple will
Oh,
tell you that's the situation at the moment.
do you know my lobster's too buttery? It's a
Yeah.
hard life there, Declan. But thinking about this chapter, then I get the sense, and I'd love to hear about what other people think, but I get the sense that Ilya really appreciates words of affirmation because Ilya tells
Mm.
Shane, about they were talking about his freckles, Shane's freckles at one point, and Ilya says, Hollander, they are stunning. And Shane is really taken aback. And Ilya was like, well, you say something now. And literally all Shane says is, you're very attractive, Ilya. And I'm like, good Lord, like put some effort into it, Shane. Um, and he's like, like say more, like that's not enough. And he does, he tries, and he's like, I love your eyes. And, you know, Ilya being the sarcastic little bitch that he is like, oh, that's so romantic, Hollander. But I really get a sense of the type of love languages that they're trying to exhibit here.
Mm. Yeah, and Ilias is definitely words of affirmation. He does constantly tell Shane how beautiful he is, and well, he does eventually. um, but yeah, he's quite complimentary, and Shane is very much acts of service. He does things, organizes things. He shows he cares for his actions and what he does for people. Um, so yeah, you have that sort of. This is the irony of love languages: is people express their love language towards their partner in a way that they want to be treated, um, without actually fulfilling their partner's love language or the way that they view it and the way that they want it. Um, and it's funny, like I have the same experience with my partner. My partner is very much acts of service. Um, where I'm not, I'm like acts of affection. Like I am like physical affection, things like that. And it's so funny the way that you'll do things for each other in the way that you want them done for you. And it's like not about that. It's like you work to their love language. You work to what they do and what they want, and you will end up with much better results. So Ilya's is obviously words of affirmation, it's affection, it's compliments, which makes sense because literally no one has been, you know, making Ilya feel good about himself in his personal life since his mother died. Like, no one he knows, no one outside of like hockey commentators and the league and the media and all, they're telling Ilya how great he is at the sport, but no one of substance who cares about Ilya is telling him how good he is and how wanted he is and how loved he is. His father didn't care. In fact, there wouldn't matter what Ilya did. If Ilya literally, you know, dug up the second coming of Jesus Christ, it wouldn't have been good enough for his father. And so, yeah, he's constantly needing validation. He wants to be complimented by someone who he cares about the compliment coming from. And Shane is there to do that. And that is what he needs Shane to do, to make him feel loved and wanted and seen and treated like he's something precious and important. And Shane, he knows that that's what Ilya wants. He just doesn't have the tact to deliver it in a way that is actually, you know, helping Ilya, you could say.
I think you're right, and I think that's why in the book Shane very much comes across as acts of service kind of person, whereas in the TV show I think Ilya comes across more as a acts of service
Mm,
kind of love because he makes sure Shane has the ginger ale and those kinds of things, and there's an attention in the TV show that's depicted there where he's observing Shane, he's understanding in real time how to communicate with Shane. So knowing that you just need to ask a direct question, you can't ask long-winded sort of non-directive questions like he does in the Tampa bar scene, for example.
yeah, yeah.
Get to the fucking point is how you're
You
gonna get it,
have to fight for it. Have
right?
to ease him into it. I think honestly, Shane is either due to his neurodiversity or just sort of the sort of jock culture that he grew up in and very traditional family background. Um, he seems less emotionally aware of feelings and emotions and all these things compared to Ilya. But the difference is Ilya is aware of this stuff, but he chooses not to act on it or to voice it a lot of times because he's so closed off. But it's not from a lack of understanding, it's from a lack of, or it's from an overwhelming fear of either being rejected, being viewed in a way that makes him vulnerable. And so, whilst he understands emotional intelligence, he holds back from expressing it because he's afraid of the vulnerability behind it. Whereas Shane literally is just oblivious and he's just inexperienced. Um, so yeah, it's interesting the way that Rachel has written that. It creates a nice contrast between um, their characters in the way that Shane is naive and Ilya is jaded.
Mm, yeah, yeah, such a good observation. And here I wanted to get your take on. In the TV show, we know Shane hasn't been with any other men.
Yeah.
However, in the book, there's references made in this chapter that Shane has been with other men.
Mm.
So, for example, there's a man from Mexico, and there was somebody else in the States, in LA, for example, and Ilya very jokingly, but maybe not so jokingly, you know, says, tell me about like Mexico top and Hollywood blowjob guy kind of thing. What's your take on what that does to the story in the book for Shane's backstory?
Mm. I honestly, I think it would have been better left out. If I'm being perfectly honest, I don't think it needed to be added in. Um, because it takes away from the height of the risk that Shane feels in doing this with Ilya. I get the sense that it would be better that it would be more in character for Shane not to have risked this at all. The whole idea of this relationship between these two is that Shane is so enamored and so in love with Ilya that he cannot help but risk this, even though it goes against every instinct about how he wants his career to go, how he wants his private life to be kept secret. It goes against the grain of all of that, and he does it anyway because he is so in love with this guy. The idea that Shane would risk it for a couple of random hookups is incongruent with his character. It's not something that this obsessive, super secretive, really nervous version of this character would do. And so I just feel like it would have been better left out.
That's interesting because this reminds me of a conversation I was having with Jen, who was on the podcast a couple of episodes ago when we talked about AO3 and fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some comments left in, I think it was our YouTube video afterwards, and Jen was interjecting and everything, so it was really interesting to read. But I think the gist was that it was between Shane and Rose, and how in the book there's no sex scene between Shane and Rose after the club, whereas in the TV show there is, and I find it quite hot because I'm very attracted to Rose Landry. However, what the impression I got from the comments was that, you know, we don't need that to be depicted in the book. We don't need to see this extra variable being acted out because it takes away from the story. And this is what I'm getting here now from you in a way, is we might not need to know this because it takes something away, or it doesn't
Mm.
add something of value in that sense. And I'm getting this impression that romances, or romance readers in general, don't really want to hear about the other stuff that people do with other people.
Yeah, unless it serves like a purpose for explaining the character or giving you an idea of the character. Um, yeah, like for example, I read a book by Scarlett Drake called Limerence, where one of the characters is like very sexually active with other people throughout the book. And it becomes like a big thing then that he focuses on this other guy. This one guy then steals his attention. He's not like any of the others. He is unique. He is like he's the best time in bed. It's never been like this with anybody, and that's the image you get. And so it elevates their importance. Like this is the actual important relationship. None of those other people that I was sleeping with matter at all, because this is the guy that has actually captured my attention. This is different. This feels different. Um, and so I suppose you could argue that that's what Rachel Reid was intending, that none of those guys mattered much or whatever, but it mattered enough for Shane to risk it, even in a foreign country, even away from home. It still mattered enough to risk it, which for his character, I find is out of character.
Can I disagree here?
Absolutely.
Because I think this makes Shane so much more relatable. It makes him a lot more real. For me, in the TV show, the fact that he hasn't been with anyone, and you know, the first guy he's with, who's Ilya, the first person who he's had sex with, a male Ilya, he falls deeply in love with, falls into this relationship. That does not happen in real life. Like, I am way past my prime and I'm still fucking single. It does not happen. You do not fall in
Mhm.
love with the first boyfriend you have. And so for me, the fact that, you know, in the book, Shane has had these other experiences gives me a little bit more, it gives me a little bit more hope that Shane knows the difference now. He knows the difference between a hookup, and he knows the difference between somebody who maybe it started off as a hookup but meant something more. For me, it's based more on reality, although I know it's a fictional world. And so for me, it kind of makes me like him a little bit more. He's not so
Mm.
naive, is what I'm getting from this.
Right, okay, yeah, yeah. No, I can see that, and that's a fair point as well, that it does paint him as someone who isn't totally like detached from this world. He's not this like little sheep that needs to be led, this little lamb who needs to be introduced to all these new things and shown the way. Um, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Um, I suppose that's the trade-off as well. And I think whether or not it's true to life or not, there is a view of someone who has only ever been in love or slept with the one person that is like, oh my god, your love is it was always meant to be, you're my one true love, and there's never been anyone but you, and I've saved myself for you, and there's like a classic traditional romance to that dynamic that I think is actually what happens in the show. Is like there's never been anybody else. You're my one true love, and that seems to be that classic rom com sort of thing. Not rom com, but like romance thing. Um, but that's also not true to life, like you said, and it can actually have negative consequences for society in general to view people in that way, like virginity and all these things as being like this exceptionally pure thing that makes everything better and more important and more meaningful. When in reality, it's not true. In fact, you more than likely want some of a bit of experience because dealing with someone that has none is hard work and it takes the enjoyment out of it. But yeah, there's arguments to be made for both. I suppose it's at like how realistic are we getting here, and at what point are we just trying to tell a very romantic story? Like what elements are we willing to sacrifice to make that happen?
I hear you. And I think for some people, that is their reality. They did wait until they got married, or they did fall in love with their first boyfriend, for example. And as a millennial, I grew up watching Newlyweds, and Jessica Simpson was put on this pedestal for being a virgin until she got
Mm,
married. And it was this sort of thing that people aspired to in a way. And the stark reality is that it doesn't happen for a lot of people. It doesn't happen for most people.
yeah,
Those people it did happen to, that's their reality, and that's still very real.
yeah,
And to elevate it from the romance to the smut, whichever way you want to think about it, they have this conversation about, I think of you when I'm in bed masturbating.
yeah.
And I thought that's real. Like, that felt really sweet in a smutty way.
Yeah, it is like a very sweet way of saying that. I'm thinking about you all the time. I mean, all the time. I mean, like, it is actually quite sweet. Um, yeah, imagine being enough to like get someone off on their own just by the thought of you. What a big compliment. What a lovely
Right?
compliment.
Right?
Yeah,
Especially when you're that young and hot.
yeah, exactly. It's like I don't need to imagine like some sort of swimwear model or whatever, or some sort of fragrance ad model wearing swimming trunks and climbing out of like a lake with dripping water all over them. I can just think of you instead. You're just as good as all of that. Like, yeah, that's a big compliment.
Yes, Theo James will always be that person. The fragrance ad he did last year, or the year before, after White Lotus, I think it was a Versace one or something like that. But good lord, those little tight speedos, the white ones, good for him. And the millions that he inspired. So, but I digress, because there is this sweetness about it. You're right, because Ilya says that there's nothing sexier than Shane Hollander's face. And then he says, as he came, but, I was trying to make it nice.
That is very sweet because it's not even about his body.
It's,
It's not about the pack or the exercise or anything like that. It's just the face. It's just your face. It's just does something for me. That's an incredibly sweet thing to hear because like it doesn't matter, you know, how we end up in the end, what size we get to, what size we don't, what age we get to, what age we don't. It's that sort of sweet, like it's you yourself who fulfills me and that I'm actually attracted to. So yeah, that's sweet.
yeah, because at the end of the chapter here, we get this. It's not even a realization, it's a reconfirmation for Ilya. And he says, like, he murmurs in Russian, I'm so fucking in love, and it's horrible. And, it says Ilya's heart fucking stopped. And he was never supposed to have fallen in love with Shane. So we get this real, and I see why Rachel Reid is doing this at the end of this chapter, because of what's going to happen in the next chapter, because it's going to flip us literally right over.
Yeah, yeah, because obviously next chapter is to do with Shane's incident on the ice. And
Yeah,
all these big ideas, right? This is the thing. When you care about someone and you are in love with someone, you cannot just switch it off like that. It doesn't happen. And so this typically happens in fiction, and authors use it as a really clever way of like shaking their characters to be like, wake up, wake up. You're deluding yourself if you think you can be without this guy at this point. And that's sort of what this is setting up. It's setting up the idea that Ilya can be like, I need to distance myself. This is this is getting too intense. I'm scared of what will happen if I let this continue on. And then Rachel Reid's going, well, what happens if I, instead of let it go, what if I just rip it away from you? How would that feel instead? And suddenly that feeling is going to be way more devastating than him trying to remove himself from that situation, and brings into stark contrast the important things within their relationship, which is to be together. They just want to be together. And all the other stuff, in the end, when faced with crisis and disaster, being together is the most important thing.
you're right. I never really thought about it that way. That's such an interesting take on it. Because yes, they've got each other, but it's going to get ripped apart and away from each other in the next chapter. And to bring Jessica Simpson back into this conversation, as I know
Of
a
course.
lot of millennials will appreciate, when 9/11 happened, Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey had, broken up before then. This is before they got married. And when 9/11 happened, it brought them back together, and that's when they got married. So, and that's when we got newlyweds. So all in all, worked out for the best. Actually, didn't really work out for the best for Jessica. I think they divorced soon after. But hey, it worked at the time.
Well, okay. Thank you for this information. My pop culture history.
Look, us elder millennials have to give the information and the history, otherwise it will be lost.
Yeah, yeah. This is clearly stuff that needs to be recorded down for the scriptures, for the future religion that will come from all pop culture Hollywood celebrities.
Yeah.
Well, that is all the time that we have today. We intended to get through more than this. Um, it just never seems to happen. We really do go full blown English literature teacher whenever it comes to this book, and we just keep on finding more and more stuff to talk about, more and more depth. So if you're enjoying this, then please continue listening, like, share it, comment, and let us know what you think. If you had any thoughts about anything we discussed, make sure to mention them. Also, we do have a book club on Fable. It's called the Long Game Podcast Book Club. If you are interested in joining us there, that'd be absolutely great. We have different lobbies and rooms where we discuss things from the podcast. We discuss Heated Rivalry and the other books, but also we read different romance books. At the minute, we are making our way through Oleander by Scarlet Drake, which is a beautiful retelling of The Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, but done through the lens of an romance, contemporary sort of drama. Fantastic. We were having great discussions there, and yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. If that is something that you're interested in, then please join us. It's fantastic. You'll have lots of fun. But on top of that as well, don't be afraid to follow us on TikTok, Instagram. Mine is Declan McKagan17 on TikTok. And then we have Silvan, who is Silvan on TikTok. And follow us, like us, share our content if you wish, and we'll see you for the next time.